Leia Healthcare. It's good to live. Proud sponsor of the Real Health podcast with Carl Henry.
Hello and welcome to Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. On this week's episode, I'm delighted to be finding all about breathing with the Wim Hof method. Does it work? How it can help? What benefits can be had to getting more focused breathing throughout the day? I'm delighted to be joined by Niall O'Murchu with breathwork.niall.com. Niall, welcome to Real Health. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
So, interesting times. Everyone is stressed. People are under incredible pressure, incredible anxiety. They're worried, they're concerned, and we want to help them breathe a little bit better. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, breathing is something that we don't think about very often, but really it's like a remote control for our nervous system. So if our breathing becomes erratic and out of balance, then we start to feel erratic and out of balance. But if our breathing is calm and smooth, then we also feel calm and smooth. So when I say it's like a remote control, when we pick up the remote control, we have control over how we want to use it. So by learning a few very simple techniques on how to control our breath, we can change how we feel, we can change how we think, and most importantly, we can change how we react to pressure.
So tell us a bit more about the Wim Hof method. I've heard about it. I haven't tried it yet, but I will. Tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, the Wim Hof method is a very simple, very effective, scientifically proven way to improve your health, to improve your strength, and improve your mood, to elevate your mood. So we've talked about one element of it so far, which is the breathing part of it. But there's also another element, which is gradually using the cold to help us as well. The cold is a type of pressure. We use the breathing to deal with the cold. But the cold also has these very unique effects on the body and the mind. And the third pillar of it is then wrapping up the breathing and the cold with the strength of the mind. So improving focus, improving our ability to make decisions, clear decisions under very, very extreme pressure.
How cold are we talking?
Well, anybody who's ever jumped in the sea knows what the feeling is like when we jump in the sea. Immediately our breath is taken away and we move up into fight or flight. We move up into this emergency mode where the energy in the body has been taken from very important things like the immune system and being pushed into our hands, into our feet in order for us to run or to fight or to save our lives. So any kind of cold will do that to you. And that's particularly important nowadays because if it doesn't have to be the cold that does that to us, an email, uncertainty, not knowing if you have a job, especially, these times, all this kind of unknown uncertainty can also push us up into that fight or flight, emergency mode, survival mode. And when we're in that for a long time, the body is not giving energy and vital kind of nutrients to things like the immune system. So by using the cold and using the breath, we can actually learn how to bring ourselves down into a state where the body can repair itself, where it can heal, where it can restore itself. And if we don't have those skills, especially at times like this, long term it can lead to inflammation, disease, and other big problems then.
Okay, so it's very much self-control is one of the key components of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very simple. What drew me to it in the beginning was that it's proven to work. Wim Hof himself, who founded the method, decided very early on that he wanted to take this method down the scientific route, that he wanted there to be no speculation about the results. And that's what drew me in first.
And how did you get involved in it? Tell us a bit about your own kind of story. Were you always into health and wellness? Were you always into kind of breathing and meditation and things like that? How did you get involved in it?
So I, like many other people, have lots of different kind of pressures and stresses in life. And a good few years ago now, we had 4 children. We still do, but they were very young at the time. We had 4 under 4. The last 2 were twins, So we myself, yeah, exactly. That's usually the reaction I get from people.
That's stress encapsulated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially in these times when people are off work and people are kind of at home. That's okay. You're very relaxed for a man.
Yeah, yes.
4 at home.
So, as a young father, I was struggling with keep myself going. I was exhausted. I was under pressure. My wife was the same. And unfortunately, in that period of time, we also had a tragedy in the family, and someone that we loved very dearly had a long, protracted, kind of torturous battle with prostate cancer and died at the end. So we were struggling with grief and we were struggling with heartache and exhaustion and stress. And one evening I was just listening to the Joe Rogan podcast in the kitchen one night, trying to prepare the twins' bottles for the next day. And Wim Hof was talking on it about this very simple way of breathing, combining it with cold, and that by doing that, we can access deep parts of our immune system that we usually can't. We can access deep reservoirs of energy that we usually can't, and we can access the ability to deal with stress. So that's how I started. Immediately, I just started practicing. I went online, bought the old 10-week course, and within a few breaths. Now, I've done lots of breathing before. I've done lots of pranayama breathing with yoga. I've done lots of qigong breathing from martial arts. And I kind of had a background in that. But once I started breathing like this, it felt totally different. And very early on, the benefits were so immediate for me and so profound that I felt to myself, I need to learn as much about this as possible so I can teach other people. Because I knew loads of people that were in a similar situation to me, different struggles, but same pressure. And so very early on, I committed every cell in my body to learning as much about it as I could.
I suppose, what's the difference with the Wim Hof method to meditation and mindfulness? Because people will be very kind of familiar with meditation and with mindfulness. This is another thing where we're saying, this is really beneficial. What's the difference between it and those two, I suppose?
The Wim Hof method is so simple. If we are practicing meditation, for example, and I practice meditation, if we practice meditation, we're trying to focus on one thing in order for everything else to fall away, to give the mind this break. Mm-hmm. When you jump or walk or step into an ice bath or the sea or a cold shower, you cannot think of anything else. In that moment, all you have is that experience and trying to use your breath to find some control and peace in that. So I've had many people say to me, look, I really struggle with mindfulness. I really struggle with meditation. But when I get in that cold, it's like mega meditation. There is nothing but that one focus. And during that period, it allows our brain then to forget about everything else. You can't be in the ice and think about your mortgage or about the virus, whatever it is. You're totally and utterly in the moment. And the same applies to the breathing techniques. They're very simple, but even people who find it difficult to lie down and do something like conscious breathing or meditation, all you have to do is follow the instructions and the chemical reaction in the brain starts to work. So after one round or two rounds, from my position as the instructor, I can see people just relaxing immediately, even people who struggle to stay still. So in that way, it's very simple. You just follow the technique. There's no kind of like willful control of the mind, trying to bring the mind back. You just do it and the body starts to relax by itself. And then the mind starts to follow the body down into this relaxed state.
Folks, you're listening to Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. You mentioned the science, quite a good bit through the interview. Tell us a bit more about the science behind the whole process.
Yeah, so anybody who's seen Wim Hof online will know that he's a very, he's a very charismatic kind of character and was well known for holding over 25 world records for doing really impressive things like being encased in ice for 2 hours or running up Mount Everest just in a pair of shorts. Swimming the world record under the ice caps just wearing a pair of shorts, and then like doing the opposite things like running a marathon in the desert in Africa with no water and no training. So he's known for all these things. But Wim himself would say that these were just kind of circus acts in order to get the scientific community's attention. He felt that he had conscious control over his immune system, that he could fortify that will, which of course up until very recently, it was thought to be impossible. Before that, what happened in the environment just happened to us. We didn't have any kind of control over it. So the science part of it kind of kicked in when eventually the science in, say, for example, in Radboud University in Holland said, okay, look, this fella says he can kind of fortify his immune system. He can do all these amazing things. We might as well bring him in. So they had an existing model in place where they would test different ways of trying to battle different types of infections. And so they brought Wim in and they injected him with a form of E. coli, which you should be pretty sick after 15, 20 minutes. Using the techniques that we learned, simple breathing techniques, Wim was able to fight it off, no symptoms at all. Now, of course, the scientific method would say to you then, okay, well, that proves the exception. Wim is the exception. He's the freak that can run up Mount Everest in his shorts. Of course, he could do something like this. Normal people can't do it. So the second big experiment then was they took a group of normal people, trained them in the Wim Hof method, the basic Wim Hof method skills that we teach people at the workshops. They brought them in, injected them with a form of E. coli, and they were also able to fight it off with no symptoms. So that turned our understanding of what the human body can do upside down. So since then there's been endless studies into the Wim Hof method and its benefits. Now we know they work. The science on it is emerging and changing all the time as new ways of looking at science comes in. But that's what's unique about it for me, at least, that the Wim Hof method is putting itself into the scientific setting, demanding that it's kind of scrutinized in a way that shows what it can do.
And you talk about extreme adventures or extreme events there. And then I follow yourself on social media. I've seen you do some extreme things as well, like climbing up mountains, basically half naked in the snow and the mad weather. Tell our listeners a bit more about that.
Well, I suppose, one of the underlying principles of the Wim Hof method is never to force, never to push. So when we talk about these kind of extreme things, that's because we've had, we started in a warm shower with 10 minutes or 10 seconds cold at the end. That was the first step. And as you progress up, you kind of progress along. But yes, the body is capable of, really extraordinary things. So I was in Poland just a few weeks ago, teaching alongside Wim Hof on his winter expedition. And we had hundreds of people there from all over the world. And one of the final pieces of training you do in extreme cold there is people get down into their knickers, into their shorts, whatever they want to wear, and we hike them up a mountain about 2.5 hours up in freezing temperatures. It's amazing to see people do it. They come to the start of the training in Poland, and they haven't experienced anything like this. And by gradually taking them through the training, every day there's different exercises. They're breathing every day. They're in the cold gradually. And to see them kind of walk up this mountain, hike up this mountain in a pair of shorts in freezing conditions, and they're warm and they're in control and they're safe. It's an amazing thing to see. And I've seen it a lot now. I've seen every type of person you can imagine get up and down that mountain. But more importantly, though, I've seen people walk through the doors of our workshops, every age and every color and shape. And at the end of 3 or 4 hours, they're getting out of an ice bath and they feel alive and they feel full of energy and in control and warm. And to me, that's nearly more spectacular to see these transformations from people over and over and over again.
And it's not just in Poland and around the world. I know the west of Ireland, you've been seen to be leading groups down on the cliffs of Moher doing similar kind of things.
Yeah.
Locals thinking you're crazy.
Yes, because the coldest temperatures I've been in Poland have been about -20, which is, obviously very cold, but it's kind of dry, But when you're on the west coast of Ireland and it's cold, the wind would kind of whip your nose off your face and it's damp. There's a different type of cold down there, So we take people down there and we take them to a similar kind of exercises and transformation. And one of the things that we do is we go on a hike down towards the end along the cliffs of Moher, in as little clothing as possible. And it is, for me, I think it's as nearly as difficult as any of the stuff I've seen and done in Poland, so people really have to focus. And of course, the locals are always a little bit surprised when they see about 20 people and loads of women running around in their bikinis up the tops of cliffs of Moher in the wintertime. So,
so for people listening in, I suppose, can you give us some simple tips for people who want to start, maybe in terms of the Wim Hof, but also in terms of, controlling the breathing a little bit more, helping the breathing to deal with stress, and maybe open themselves up to the power of kind of cold immersion to begin with?
Yeah, there's a few very simple things we can start with. And I suppose for people now, because I like you, I've talked to loads of people. I was just in town. Everyone's talking about the virus and what's going on and the potential. And it's this huge unknown, and there's a lot of fear out there. And what happens when we're fearful, as we said before, is that the body moves up into this fight or flight mode. So heart rate goes up, the breathing becomes erratic. All of a sudden, our focus becomes very, very narrow. people are nervous, and this is a very difficult thing to get out of, but it's also a very dangerous thing to, if we're in it. So a very simple way of getting out of that state of feeling on the edge, feeling in survival mode, is just to breathe in and to exhale fully. Carl, try it there. Breathing in. Now exhale all the way out. Now you keep breathing like that, breathing in. And it's the exhale that you want to focus on. Within 5 or 6 long exhales, the vagus nerve, which sits up in the back of the brain, triggers. It drops the heart rate. The body starts to relax and the mind starts to follow. So anybody who's listening or watching, take those deep breaths in and the long, smooth exhale. And within about 5, 6, 7 breaths, you'll feel the body come down into this state where it can, if the body is calm, it can adapt. Everyone's felt that situation where we're under pressure and we kind of tense up and it's more difficult. The body can't adapt as well if we're tense. But if we can get the body relaxed through the exhale, then the body can adapt to any situation. The cold, for example. Heat is a pressure. The cold is a pressure. Stress is a pressure. Anxiety is a pressure. They all have a similar effect on the body. And if we can get our exhale going, then we can take control of that. So that's one thing that they can do on the side of the breath. Just exhale. Because when people are under stress, we often say deep breath, and we're talking about the deep breath in, but no one's really talking about the exhale. So the exhale is one thing. On the cold side, most people are in a nice warm shower every day. And we've evolved across millions of years to get to a point where we have a nice warm shower. So we should enjoy that warm shower. But at the end of that warm shower, if we just turn it to cold and let the cold water hit our body, and what will happen? Breath taken away, body moves up into emergency survival mode. Again, using the breathing that we've just done, the exhale. Try to get the exhale under control. And when we get the exhale under control in the cold, and it can only be 10 seconds in the cold, it's plenty. 10, 20 seconds. When we get that control, then the hormones in the body start to balance. Then the circulation starts to improve. There's this great phrase, I think it must come from the Irish language, and when you translate it, it says that, we go to the sea or we go to the cold to drown the miserable man. So no matter how we feel, how miserable we are before we get into the cold water of the sea or the cold shower, when we get out, we feel totally different. So a little bit of cold at the end of your hot shower, and you will drown that miserable person.
Okay, so start with breathing even during the day. Get a handle on that, particularly with the exhalation, which is important. Yeah. And then take you to the next stage for the last kind of 10, 20 seconds of your shower. Switch it to cold, and again, focus on the breathing that you practice. And it's a really good way to introduce yourself into it. Yeah. And then with hopefully warmer weather coming down the line, getting into the sea might be a nice way to kind of take that a little bit further then as well. Yeah, absolutely. And with the cold, we always have to be very respectful of the cold. The cold is a very powerful force, and we always have to take it gradually. So as people progress through their cold showers, their hot and cold showers, then the sea is there, of course, to go into it. And again, everyone knows that feeling from putting their foot in the sea and how cold it is, and losing that breath. So just trying to bring that breath under control, and always taking it nice and kind of respectfully in the sea, always respecting Mother Nature. And people want to find out more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram or Facebook or online. It's just breathewithniall.com or at breathewithniall on social media.
Fantastic. I know I introduced you as Niall. I know you speak it as Neil. I thought it'd be handy for people to find you with Niall, with Niall.
I appreciate that.
Neil or Niall, whichever way you want to pronounce. Thank you so much for joining us today and telling us all about breathing, the Wim Hof method. And I think it's really important, especially in these times. People are stressed, they're anxious. Yep. Breathing's a really important way to help manage the stress that we're dealing with at the moment. So thank you so much for joining us. Folks, you can check Neil out on all social media platforms and do practice the breathing. And if you're very, very brave, have a chance, try some of the cold therapy as well. Neil, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
Folks, I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. It is a tough time. There's lots of stress, lots of anxiety. This is one of the ways with which you can improve how you're dealing with that. As ever, you know where we are. It's at CarlHenryPT on Twitter and on Instagram, or realhealth@independent.ie. Have a wonderful week. Keep safe. Keep well, and we'll see you next week. Slán go fóill.
Leia Healthcare. It's good to live. Proud sponsor of the Real Health podcast with Carl Henry.